You must be a gamer to work in games.
To work in game development, you say?
Yes. Let's say work in game development. Working in games may be a bit more of a adjacent title. So let's focus on game development.
I think it's very important to put here a distinction between what's actually working in the game industry, because games is game development is a big industry. It has sub industries within it. So it can be using game engines for cinematic production. It can be for simulations, and it can be for complete workspace oriented applications like training staff in companies like Intel. Okay, so it mustn't be even games as in the Steam sense or mobile games, right? So really depends. Now, if we speak specifically about games as in games, right?
Games,
then
yes.
I still don't think that you have to be a gamer for that. It certainly gives you some advantages. It certainly enlarges your arsenal of creativity, because you're more exposed to what is even possible in games and how different games or studios have solved different problems. Like, for example, if you played Call of Duty 1 or 2 or whatever, and you see that there is open field and you can just go any direction, but the game still has to limit you within your game zone, doesn't have to let you, it has to confine you to the game zone, game area. It can put walls, but if it's an open field, then there's no possibility to put walls. But then you just go there and there's a minefield, and then you just blow up on the minefield. So suddenly it's like a wall, but it's not a wall. So aesthetically it's not a wall, practically it is, right? But if you didn't play it and you implement your own game now, and you're like, oh, how do I confine my players to this zone? I don't know how. So you might come up with the same solution, but the more games you play, the more solutions you have already gone through, and it expands your creativity, because creativity is the function of our past experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say you don't necessarily need to play games, but you need to understand games. You need to understand why games work the way they are. Like if you make a shooter games, you need to understand exactly as you say how these games communicate to player that something is a walkable and something isn't walkable space. There is a common language that genres have, and you need to understand that language. And you can even see it if you play games across multiple genres. If you play, I don't know, civilization-like games versus RTS-like games, which is all within a strategy, but those two sub-genres have completely different language in how the gamers interact with the systems. And if you don't play them, you will have a very hard time understanding it. So it's not necessarily, but if you don't play those games, you need to find a way to learn that system. Otherwise, you learn that language. Otherwise, you will not be able to make a good games, because you will not know the conventions.
Yeah, and you don't know what is also frustrating in those games. So if there are just common pain points which people kind of hate in the genre, and you played those, so you can actually make a game which doesn't have that pain point anymore, because it solves that pain point. Also, I would actually mention for contrary that if you come with small experience in the genre and you develop a game in the genre, even though you're not an experienced gamer in that one, you might bring in some fresher point of view from your experience from other stuff, which then actually might be sometimes beneficial, because then you are copying the other genre, the other games in that genre less, which makes your game potentially, well, statistically more unique. Doesn't matter. That doesn't mean that it will be a better game, but it will be more unique, which is also important. So it's kind of, there's pros and cons for both. But the last question is, well, sub question is, should you actually play games just to be a good developer? Probably no. Just play games if you enjoy playing them. But if your goal is to be a good developer, just use whatever you have. If you have the experience, cool. If you don't have the experience, cool. Sure, no problem. Just focus on how you make the best experience, and just focus on developing games. If you like playing games, then sure, play games as well. Do both.
Yeah,
Ideal.
absolutely. And also, it's good to have these things mixed up on the actual team. It's absolutely okay if one person on the team has very little experience with a strategy game. Let's say we are making something like Age of Empires. We don't necessarily need anyone to. We don't need a specific person to have experience with all the previous Age of Empires, as long as there is a previous or another developer that has that experience, because then you actually can lead to some really new mix of experiences. But you need to understand the pain points, you need to understand why people like this.
Actually, most of the original developers of those classics like Age of Empires, they've now been gamers themselves.
Yeah.
Which is crazy because, I mean, RTS players up until this day, including me, by the way, play Age of Empires 2, which came out like 2020. 2000. And 2.
Yeah.
Not 20.
It still hasn't been hit, yeah.
It's 4 years ago. Crazy. And it's still the golden staple for RTS, but it's made by people who have not been inspired by so much by the past generations of RTS, because it's kind of, well, there have been some RTS games before that, but it's not mandatory at all.